arriving in the overhead here to join it, the Boeing C-17A Globemaster III from number 99 Squadron. This outstanding tactical and strategic four-jet airlifter. And it was an aircraft that when it came into RAF service in May 2001, really was a step change for the Air Force's capability, because since the retirement of the short Belfast in 1976, the RAF hadn't possessed its own outsized strategic airlift fleet. Instead, the service relied on civil contractors, including, ironically, those self-same short Belfasts, and later hired Antonov and 124s. It was decided that that gap needed to be plugged, and in the year 2000, the government finalised a lease and support deal with the US Air Force for an initial 4 C-17As. Number 99 Squadron was reformed to operate them, and soon the C-17s were proving their worth on particularly the air bridge to Afghanistan, plus a whole range of other commitments. The original 4 leased C-17s were then bought outright. The fleet was eventually brought up to 8 aircraft of this very impressive aeroplane, the C-17A Globemaster III. Such an impressive aeroplane, and so little noise from the 4 Pratt & Whitney F117 turbofan engines. A mightily, mightily impressive aeroplane, initially a product of McDonnell Douglas, later part of the Boeing stable, and an aeroplane that's as at home performing tactical taskings, for example on unprepared airstrips, as it is in the strategic role.
You wouldn't believe how fast they were going, the noise and the yeah. But it was fat out.
Brown, who bought the aircraft with a view to possibly, if he proved himself able, converting to it in due course. He was already a private pilot on light aircraft. I believe he owned a Cessna at the time. And he has gone through the classic tail dragger training route, starting off on Piper Super Cubs with the Classic Aero Club, gradually graduating to the point where a few years ago he was able to fly the Hurricane for himself, and he's now on today's programme. It's very appropriate to see so many examples of historic Army aviation represented at Abingdon, given the fact that we're now on an active Army base. Fought in the Zulu Wars of 1879 in the Battle of Rorke's Drift. In 2015, the barracks here became the home to 3 close support and 4 general support regiments of the Royal Logistics Corps. And outside the perimeter of the airfield site is Edward Brooks Barracks, home to the 7 Battalion Rifles of the Territorial Army, named after a local Oxfordshire soldier who was awarded the Victoria Cross during the First World War. Here we see an example of an aircraft type that was crucial to Army operations in successive conflicts, World War II and the Korean War, the Oscar. The story began in 1938 when a company called Taylor-Craft Aeroplanes England was established near Leicester to build and market the existing range of Taylor-Craft light aeroplanes. The first of them had just 55 horsepower on its light-only engine. It was called the Plus C, and 23 of those had been built by the time war broke out in September 1939. Now, that might then have been the end of that story, because civil flying was all prohibited, or mostly prohibited, with the outbreak of hostilities. But it was then recognised that the Oscar would make a very good platform to support the Army in a new role, that of air observation post, providing airborne artillery spotting, and that saved the British Taylor-Craft line. The Plus Cs were all pressed into service during 1940. 100 new Plus D models were ordered in early 1941, and the design was successively improved from there. While the Taylor-Craft Plus D was in production for the RAF, because they were then operating the aircraft on behalf of the Army, the decision was taken to give the aeroplane a new name for military use, and the decision fell upon Oscar, which is a Roman word for warm, southerly breeze. And the first newly named Oscar Mark I came into service with 651 Squadron in 1942. Oscar used the phrase "the eyes of the army" as a marketing slogan, and it was a very apt one, because later marks of Oscar provided that over the horizon artillery spotting for field artillery units in all sorts of theatres of war. Most famously in Normandy as Allied forces advanced. In fact, the first air observation post unit of Oscars landed in Normandy itself on D-Day +1, the 7th of June, 1944. Here we've got the AOP-6 model, which is a post-war Oscar, which served RAF units on behalf again of the Army during the 1950 to 53 Korean War. They were some of the very few British military air assets to be deployed during that conflict. Later came the AOP-9, of which we've got 2 present as part of our fly-in and static display. That was the last operational military Oscar with the newly independent Army Air Corps, which was founded in 1957, until they were replaced by helicopters. Of course, these aircraft have carried on being hugely popular with private owners, such as the case. aircrafts were heavily upgraded during their careers. The Mark 1s of the Army Air Corps were modified to Mark 7 standard like this, with more powerful engines, new electronics, a revised tail rotor, and infrared shrouds for the engine exhausts. And the Lynx in all its forms served outstandingly with British forces. When you think of Operation Desert Storm, the Gulf War in 1991, perhaps most famous are the exploits of the likes of the RAF's Tornadoes, Jaguars, Buccaneers and so forth. But Lynx were there as well. To give you an idea of their exploits, a Lynx Mark 1 from 654 Squadron of the Army Air Corps destroyed 2 Iraqi armoured personnel carriers and 4 Iraqi T-55 tanks on a single day in February 1991 in what was the first operational employment of the TOW missile. Equally, the Royal Navy Lynx. This one dates from 1978 when it first flew as a Mark 1. Westland used it for a few years for test and demonstration purposes. It then was delivered to the Army Air Corps in 1983. 10 years later it was modified to become a Mark 7 and it notched up 6,500 flying hours in Army service by the time it was retired in 2013, and it became a donor airframe for the successor to the Lynx, the Bristol Western, or nowadays Leonardo helicopters 1. The airframe was stripped down and it was disposed of by the military in 2017. A business which has very deeply using all sorts of different aircraft over the years bought it. He intended to use the Lynx as a glorified guard ornament, literally. But he then decided, no, I'm going to restore it to fly. Wheeled Aviation at North Weald in Essex did the honours. It made its first hovers on the 23rd of December 2021 in civilian hands, and its first proper flight on the 14th of February 2022, and it made its debut as a civilian aircraft on the airshow circuit a fortnight ago at Old Warden. Rather like the Oster that we saw earlier, and rather like the Gazelle, wherever British Army forces went on exercise or operation the world over in significant force, Lynx would have been there as well. The final Army examples were retired in 2015. The Mark 8s of the Royal Navy followed suit in 2017. The last Lynx in British military service were the wheeled AH-9As of the Army Air Corps, which were retired in 2018. Nowadays the Wildcat, which may look quite like a Lynx and is a development of it, but in reality is an entirely new helicopter, is in service with, once again, both the Army and the Navy, as well as various overseas operators. There are those who would say that it's very difficult to better the original. Now for it to land. So operated by Project Lynx Z179, back to the helicopter serial. Our first display at Abingdon. It's fully in hands of the Western Link A7. Taking place alongside on the glass flight line. Of Rich Mitchell, Army Link pilot, and the aircraft owner, Graham Hinkley. While we get the next aircraft underway, in fact they are now clear, so the next very, very distinctive aeroplane is now taken to the runway. Regular Abingdon goers amongst you will have seen this machine here several times before. It's the first time for the aircraft to get airborne. It's just rolling now, so I'll let it get airborne beforehand. This being the North American OV-10B Bronco. Message from event control. We've got a few items of lost property that have been handed in. Perhaps most importantly, a wallet belonging to a Simon Williams. We have that in event control. So Simon Williams, if you've lost a wallet, please do come along to retrieve it. And we've got 2 keys that have been found around the site, which you also, if you've lost one, may want to get hold of again before you head home later. If you want to come and retrieve these items, then please make your way to the right-hand end of the showground as we look out towards the airfield, over near where the C-17, the large grey transport aircraft, is parked. You will find the tent next to event control, the Threshold.aero tent. Please go there and event control will put you back in touch with your... But now to the Bronco, and there aren't many twin turboprop, twin boom aeroplanes capable of manoeuvrability like that. This is in many ways an incredible aircraft, a jack of all trades. The US military wanted a tough, the requirement was dubbed the Light Armed Reconnaissance Aircraft, and it had to meet certain specifications. Just imagine putting all these attributes together in one airframe. Twin crew, able to withstand loads of between +8 and -3 G, able to fly off aircraft carriers, yet still have a top speed of 350 miles an hour and be able to carry 2,400 pounds of cargo or 6 paratroops and stretchers. North American Aviation won the order, and this, the OV-10 Bronco, was the result. It entered service in time for the Vietnam War, where they were used by both the US Marine Corps and the US Air Force. And they performed all sorts of work in Southeast Asia. They acted as forward air controllers directing strikes by fast jet attack aircraft. They also directed fire from Douglas AC-47 gunship aircraft and by ground artillery. They provided post-strike damage assessment after major American air raids. They escorted the C-123 provider transports that were involved in the ranch hand defoliation missions. They performed attack sorties of their own in US Air Force service with machine guns and high explosive rockets. The US Navy used them as light attack platforms there, on naval fire support duties and to drop paratroops. All of this in one relatively small but highly agile and adaptable airframe. Two Garrett T76 turboprops powering the aircraft, 715 shaft horsepower each. And this is a Bronco that used to belong to one of the export customers for the type, West Germany. Recently resurfaced tarmac that graces Abingdon Airfield, but nonetheless I expect to see it brought up in a fairly short stop. Holding it on, touching down. And they're bringing things to a halt in very short order. Another super display from Tony De Bruyn with the North American OV-10B Bronco. Helicopter designs were produced at once by the Saunders Row company, which was later taken over by Westland. One was an anti-tank helicopter for the Army Air Corps, the Scout, which we'll see on the programme later. The other was what was known as a manned torpedo-carrying helicopter for the Royal Navy, which initially went under the rather charming name of Sea Scout, which they then changed to WASP. And that term, manned torpedo-carrying helicopter, really epitomizes what this was all about. It has no sonar on board. It was largely seen as being a weapon-carrying platform only, which would be sent directly to its target by parent Royal Navy small ships, by other vessels, or indeed by a Western helicopter to attack the submarine. They were able to operate up to 100 miles from there for it to recommence. And when it does get airborne, you'll have a very good look again at that mastering four-wheel undercarriage, rather like a single lorry, which is so designed to allow the WASP to manoeuvre even on the heavily pitched deck. It would have been very small deck of one of the Royal Navy's small ships. Wheels can block if required, but not for ground taxiing purposes. The WASP was always hover taxiing into a parking position. Now, one thing that's really notable about the WASP is the small tail rotor, which makes manoeuvring out of wind quite difficult due to the pilot's lack of rotor authority, even in moderate winds. Now, as with quite a number of British military types, it took far longer than expected for the WASP to earn its spurs in combat. That because of the fact that thankfully the Cold War didn't turn truly hot. In the case of the movement, and it's one of numerous WASPs now airworthy in civilian hands in the UK, of which we've got two here. And as you will have seen if you've had a look at this Wasp close up, it is absolutely immaculate. It was one of the top prize-winning aircraft in the Freddie March Spirit of Aviation Concours d'Elegance contest at the Goodwood Revival, no less, a few years ago. It's a really good example, rather like the Hurricane we saw earlier in the age of Rick owner James Brown, of private owner fulfilling a dream by owning and flying a historic aeroplane. Because John Heath, who owns this Wasp, he's not flying it for us at the moment, really fell in love with this quirky little helicopter, decided he wanted one, and was able to fulfill that dream, and the result is one of the most outstanding examples we've seen flying anywhere. Flying it for us today was Dr. Terry Martin, who we've seen here in his own Wasp in the past. In fact, he owned this one for a time before it was bought by John Heath. Terry's own Wasp. Wartime fighters from the Yakov zone. There have been all sorts of different 1990s using American Allison engines. Others were set in train in the USA and Romania, all of them very popular as rather affordable, at least by the standards of other aeroplanes, warbird fighter. And this one is the result of a collaboration between companies in France and Romania. On the French side, a firm called Capel Aviation, which had been involved in a large-scale recovery of Yak 11 trainer aircraft from Egypt. In Romania, the Avioane Craiova firm, and they came up with what they called a new... The aircraft were built in Romania, available in both single and two-seat form. This is one of the two-place aircraft. The legend of the original Yak 3s in combat was established to no small degree by a very famous unit indeed, the so-called Normandie-Niemen Regiment. To give it its official title, it was Régiment de Chasse No. 3 of the Free French Air Force. But airborne from its slot in the helicopter lineup in front of you and starting its display is the army cousin of the Wasp that we saw displaying not long ago in the form of the Westland Scout AH-1. Ordered in quantity by the Army Air Corps as a light battlefield helicopter. It came into service in early 1963. And it was a mainstay of Army Air Corps operations at home and abroad until the Lynx that we saw earlier came along. Main armament was the SS-11 air-guided anti-tank missile. It could also carry 5 or 6 troops in its cabin, and general-purpose machine gun, GPMGs mounted in the cabin or on the skids, boosted its armament. In overseas theatres in which Britain was engaged during this type's operational heyday, the Scout was very active. When there were uprisings against British rule in the Aden Protectorate, today part of Yemen, in what was known as the Aden or Radfan emergency, they were there, and Scouts were much engaged in the Falklands War of 82 I should say. Scouts inserted special forces, conducted their own attack missions, casualty evacuations and much more. Just one Argentinian air-to-air kill was scored during the campaign, and that was against a Scout of No. 3 Commando Brigade Air Squadron of the Royal Marines, which was shot down by an Argentine Air Force Bucara counterinsurgency aircraft near Goose Green. Scout units were deployed with the British Army of the Rhine in West Germany and in Northern Ireland. They used some pretty impressive kit in Northern Ireland. The then new Marconi Heli-Tele reconnaissance system was one. They employed that for air-to-ground surveillance work with an external camera, an internal monitor which was watched by the observer, and pictures transmitted back to ground stations. Often in Northern Ireland they'd fly by night, with the crew employing night vision goggles and the very powerful night sun searchlight. Of 160 Scouts that were built, 150 of them went to the Army Air Corps. There were just a few export sales, and they were used until the mid-1990s by units that were active as part of the Territorial Army. This one dates from 1964. It served with various army units until forces fighters of the European theatre of World War II, but one that was hugely important elsewhere as well. An aircraft that weighs 7 tons, more than some multi-engine light bombers or strike aircraft of the period. Very much a fighter, but also very capable as an air-to-ground left to right to go off and hold prior to its slot. Ironically, when Republic Aviation first came up with their new first time. The P-47 wasn't particularly long range, nor especially good at low level, but it was developed further. It became a great bomber escort fighter, able to accompany American and British bombers deep into Germany. It also served from mid-1943 in the Mediterranean and the Pacific. And it was the P-47D model like this that really realised the aircraft's true potential. It was longer ranged, it had more refined systems, more protection for the pilot, and so forth. Even after the Merlin-engined North American P-51 Mustang, which we'll be seeing two of to close the show today, came into service with the 8th Air Force, the P-47 continued playing a big role in the European and other theatres because it was a very effective fighter-bomber as well as an air-to-air fighter. It was in that air-to-ground role that the Thunderbolt played the biggest role of any American fighter in softening up the Luftwaffe prior to D-Day. More than 15,600 Thunderbolts were built, making it also the most numerous American fighter of World War II. And 830 of those served with the Royal Air Force in Southeast Asia, once again with great distinction. In spite of the fact that this was an aircraft that conducted so many tremendous exploits flying with the US 8th and indeed 9th Air Forces out of British bases, there's only one of them now flying in Europe, and you're looking at it here. It belongs to Fighter Aviation Engineering. Maintained by Air Leasing at Sywell, though it's most often based at Duxford in Cambridgeshire, which is itself a former P-47 base. Meantime, if you are anywhere near the main arena, the Solent Stars children's motorcycle display team of 5 to 16-year-olds are about now starting their second and final performance of the day through until 4 o'clock, with saxophonist Robert Benson in the main marquee also playing until then as they close out our ground programme at the Abingdon Air Country show for this year in just under half an hour's time. It's always good to welcome some new talent to the air display scene, and we're certainly doing that with this next act, formed only last year when one of the two pilots rolling afterwards. And this time they've changed ends and they're going to be performing stall turns. So, up they go, airspeed bleeding off, into the vertical. Off comes the speed, off comes the speed, off comes the speed. a boot full of rudder, and round they both go. The airline's aircrew. But he's also got a lot of display experience. For many years he flew in the outstanding Aerostars display team of Yak 50s and 52s. He has also flown the Spitfire for Air Leasing at Sywell. And he is a very, very accomplished aerobatic exponent. From that very sleek, very lightweight aircraft of largely composite construction, standard decathlon, able to perform more specialised aerobatic manoeuvres. And this aircraft is being flown by Patrick Wilson, and he's the newcomer in this team. He gave his first public displays initially as a solo. Lyle taught Patrick to fly from his first ever lesson as a PPL student onwards, right through to aerobatics and then formation flying. Pulling up now for a hesitation half Cuban manoeuvre. So there, once again, rounding the apex, rolling out with a half hesitation on the downward. And setting up now for a 4-point hesitation roll. And pulling up for a half Cuban manoeuvre this time. As Phil runs back in from the right with the XA-42 for a speedy rejoin. Titan Airways, VIP and charter airline, now with an almost all, I think, Airbus fleet, and both Patrick and Phil fly the A320 family for Titan. In fact, it's Patrick's father, Gene Wilson, who founded the company originally. And now a classic corkscrew manoeuvre with the extreme decathlon right way up, and the XA-42 rolling around in smoke. Phil now again conducting a rapid rejoin. That colour scheme, the Titan colour scheme, really works well on both of these aircraft. Even when looking at them somewhat into sun, as we do at Abingdon. Heading back in now, Patrick pulling them up into a loop. And another quarter clover manoeuvre to reposition the display. Heading away from us initially on the 45-degree line before turning right. Just extending out a little bit to ensure correct position, now tightening the turn to run back in on the B-axis straight towards us for their final brake. Pulling up for the vertical brake, the Titans. Designed from France, which became part of the Westland Aerospatiale collaboration. In they come towards us for an initial break. That's what they call the roulette break, and the formation is now split into two sections, and they're performing wingovers in line astern at either end of the line before running back in towards one another for a crossover as close as possible to show centre. See, we've got a variety of different configurations amongst the gazelles in this display, and particularly distinctive is the one leading the pair that's now off to the right in the blue and white colour scheme. This one was used by Kinetic, the test and trials organisation at Boscombe Down, including employment by the Empire Test Pilot School. It's got an extended probe on the nose, which makes it very easy to distinguish. It wasn't retired from service by Kinetic until 2016. That's the one that's in the hands of the team leader, Tim Gray, a former Royal Marine and current RAF officer who coincidentally flies the C-17 with number 99 Squadron at Fry's Norton. He has 3,000 hours out of his 8,000 total flying hours on the Gazelle, and he is a former member of the Army's Blue Eagles helicopter display team. Number 2 today is Andy Usher, who served in the Royal Marines for 27 years, flying in the Falklands War, both Gulf Wars, Afghanistan and Northern Ireland. Today he is a corporate and VIP pilot with more than 7,000 flying hours in his logbook. Then we have Mitch, who flies through the Gazelle as a reservist following his active service days with the Army Air Corps on both the Gazelle and the Lynx. He's a pilot for Virgin Atlantic Airways on the Airbus A350. And number 4 is Kev Matheson, who's also the team manager, an ex-Royal Navy helicopter pilot on the Gazelle, the Sea King, the Merlin and the SH-60 Seahawk for the US Navy. Boscombe Down Gazelle in the lead, closest to us of the two middle aircraft, one in civilian colours. Furthest away, the largely white Gazelle is in the markings of number 32 Squadron, Royal Air Force, which flew the Gazelle in the VIP transport role. In fact, I think this one is just painted as such. It didn't actually serve that purpose. The team was first established in 2014, performing both static and flying displays. The leader calling the break, and there goes the number 4 helicopter. Initially performing a pedal turn, having climbed into an angle of 40 degrees. And then coming back for a wing over, and the colour scheme is this one, that very familiar livery of 705 Naval Air Squadron of the Fleet Air Arm of the Royal Navy, with the shark emblem on the tail. It was that for so long provided the Sharks 4-ship display team, as well as a 2-ship known as the Putters pair. Now, what makes the Gazelle such a distinctive design is the tail rotor. Number 4 positioning to fly through the middle of the rest of the formation. And it's going to be another sprightly rejoin here. They're based at Landsmead Airfield near Wantage. Pilot lineup predominantly Army Air Corps, Royal Marines, Royal Navy pilots and both sets. A large number of volunteer ground crew who readily give up their time to assist the team in its displays. Possible by the owners of the helicopters, Bolton Aviation. better way to finish our display today than with these two classic American fighters. Hailed by Contrary Mary, the two-seater. The Hurricane heading home, and then the finale display have just said they too are ready to roll. Miss Helen, owned by Robert Tyrrell, operated by the Aircraft Restoration Company. They are both heading home. Contrary Mary to Sywell, Miss Helen to Duxford. And that concludes the flight display at the Abingdon Air Country Show for 2023. And passengers, a marvellous day, beautiful weather, a really fantastic array of airplanes, not just in the air but on the ground as well. And now it's time for quite a lot of those to head home, such as the Wasp from Navy Wings heading straight across the airfield on departure to Yeovilton, and the French Army marked Gazelle.